I gave, okay, 2 years ago, I gave the keynote speech at the road race meeting, and and I was reflecting back on the 40 years in the sport, and so I think I may have a recording of that around that I could send you because there also was a lot of AV with that. Now the AV, the photos and stuff like that, I got permission to use.
Hmm.
Know how far, the right to use the photos would extend beyond that.
Okay,
Obviously, because one of the photos that's in there is a Jimmy Carter photo, and I have to be pretty protective of that.
sure.
But anyway, I can send you that, and that
Good.
it'll probably cover a lot of the same type of material that we've covered, but it's sort of anyway. There's some things that are talked about in there that we didn't talk about, so it's
Good.
um,
That sounds great. Why am I freezing? No. Yeah, freezing. Okay, we're back.
all
I
right.
think the weather is having an effect.
Yeah, no, it might
As
be. It might be. And I guess the other thing that I was, thinking about it, obviously, you were at the epicenter of this, but, I think that, the hostile takeover of the RRCA in, 2000 after Henley left is definitely part of the history of the sport.
it is, it is. And I was at the epicenter, and I think I will mention that to Sarah Franklin also. You brought up some great points. You're a treasure trove, Phil. You really are.
Yeah,
And I'd like to
I've
ask
been
you.
around, so, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
stuff with AARC and stuff like that, and
yes.
it's all, those were turbulent times. So
Oh my God.
yeah,
I will never forget
yeah,
that. I'm
yeah,
not going to, well, maybe we'll chat about that after this, but
yeah,
it was quite something.
yeah,
It
yeah, no,
really was.
yeah, yeah.
But getting back to racing, what was the hardest marathon or most challenging marathon you ever ran?
I mean, when I think of just pure physical exhaustion, um, and they weren't marathons, they were ultras. We're two of the 50 milers I ran. So I ran the JFK 50
Uh,
mile in 2017. And then I forgot whether I mentioned this to you before about Nick Marshall and his list of 50 milers. And so he kept this list of people who have the longest gap between their first 50 miler and their most recent 50 miler. And so I ran my first 50 miler in 1974. And so when I ran JFK in 2017, I had a 43-year span between my
yes.
first and my most recent. And when I finished that race, I was pretty wiped out. And but anyway, so actually this fall, I was anyway, there are four people who have a span of over 50 years between their first and their last. So last fall, so I ran my first 50, on September 29th, 1974. And so I entered a 50-mile race on November 9th, um, and finished it actually. So now I guess there were three. So now I'm the fourth person with a 50-year gap between my 50 miles. So anyway, it was something called the Tunnel Hill 50 mile. So, and I think that may have been the hardest thing, hardest thing I ever did. It was 13 hours, and Um, anyway, and I just, I mean, I was kind of weaving at the end, and some people came over to ask me if I needed any help, and I said, no. And then they pointed, and they about 200 yards up was the finish line, and I wasn't even aware of that. And they said, "There's the finish line," and I said, "Well, okay, I guess I can
Yeah.
finish it." But that was probably the hardest thing. It's 13 hours.
Oh,
It
oh, that sounds like it. Where was it?
well, it's spelled like Vienna, but it actually is Vienna. They say it Vienna, so it's in
Oh,
Southern Illinois, and actually it's the one that Des Linden has said that she wants to enter because it's perfectly flat and it's on hard packed dirt,
mm,
sort of optimal conditions. And so after I came across the line in a little over 13 hours, I about 10 minutes later, the winner, there's a 50 mile and a 100 mile. And about 10 minutes after I came across, the winner of the 100 mile came across. So I nearly got lapped by 50 miles, by 50 miles in a race. So,
oh, that's funny. But you finished,
but
and that was
I did
what's
finish.
important.
I'm now number 4 on the
That's right.
list of Americans with 50 years in between. So anyway,
Well, we are, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. I would
yeah,
say we have about 10 minutes.
okay.
Is there anything that you would like to add that we have talked about or that we may not have gotten to?
Well, one of the things that just in terms of running movement type of things is that I think that races uh, that races have over the years have largely remained local events, and I think haven't been in very general terms, the sport has been very parochial. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that trying to you have this sport, and you get all these press releases, and they've poured hundreds and millions of dollars into charities. And I think that's great, but I think that the sport has done much too little to invest in itself.
Mm.
That they're really I found that at various times I've you know tried to work on things, you know, national, I mean, you've got Running USA, which, says sort of tried to get itself going as a trade association. But, I mean, what do they have? They have maybe 300 members. And every, we've worked for years to try and get this pro circuit,
Yeah,
we're up to 5, and we're gaining some momentum on it now. But still, with all of these local races, and even big local races, they're all governed by boards that, and if their event is going great in their local area, they sort of say, well, why do I need to do anything larger than myself to promote the sport? So,
right,
I
right.
mean, that's probably my biggest disappointment over my career has been this just sort of lack of any vision bigger than themselves. I guess that would be anyway, that's my soapbox.
Well, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about all of that, but you're right. Um, let's see, keeping my eye on the time.
Okay.
Um, just one more point about road racing. We, over the years, have not had a lot of people of color in our sport. And have you seen that changing? And if not, why not?
Um, it's interesting, and obviously there was a raised consciousness of all of this after the George Floyd situation, which sort of brought a lot of that to
Mhm.
the fore, and a lot of running events, including Cherry Blossom, initiated, DEI policies, and,
Right,
did a lot of reaching out. Now it's, going to be interesting to see in the current political environment, how that, sustains itself or whatever. And we started tracking ethnicity in Cherry Blossom probably, I don't know, 4 years ago, actually. And we've been steady at 6% black year after year after year. And we have done, and we feel like we have made outreach
Mhm.
efforts. We've been working with that Game Changers program, and we funded, two minority coaches and things like that. But so far, at least in the last 4 years, our demographic breakdown by race is pretty. But I think if you look back if you look back into the 1970s, I mean, 6% is a lot better. I mean, I remember
Yes,
back in the early DC Roadrunners days, there was this guy named Bill Solers, actually, who was, he was probably the only black face that you saw at a DC Roadrunner race. And I think, probably, I think some of it has to do with demographics,
hmm,
but they're just, there wasn't. I mean, obviously Marilyn Bevins was,
hmm,
kind of a pioneer. I remember her, running and winning the Maryland Marathon at least a couple times, and so I just I think in general there weren't it just wasn't something that was discussed or thought about back in those days. And
right.
I think, it's come, inclusivity has come forward in, recent years. And, so we'll continue to make our initiatives and, hope that we can drive those numbers
Yes.
upward.
Thank you. Bill, it has been an honor and a pleasure to interview you 3 times.
Well, we got it. All right. Well,
And
stroll down memory lane. So,
yes, it's been fun. It really has. And I wish you well.
okay.
Uh, and have a happy fourth.
Okay. You too.
And thank you. And if you have any questions or concerns, just get in touch with me and I will do the same. Meanwhile, again, it was wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you, Phil.
Thank you, Freddie. All
You're
right.
welcome. Bye
Bye.
bye.